do want to address something that I believe has developed in this election as an elephant in the room. And I actually think it's more of a donkey in the room. And it's this conversation about electability. And the conversation goes something like this. Well, I'm not really sure if America is ready for a woman of color to be president of the United States. This is not a new conversation for me. In fact, this is a conversation I have heard in every campaign I have, and now here's the operative word, won.
Kamala Harris, in that moment, was making an argument about electability. The problem with the argument that she was making it in identitarian terms, as if people did not like her because she was either black or she was either a woman. I have yet to hear anything come up from the standpoint of that at all. In fact, when you're looking at the polling, the people in the polling wanted a woman far more than they wanted a man. It was a hurdle to be a man in this election, at least from the standpoint of some of the polling that I just went through today. It's not because you're a woman of color. It is not because you're a woman of color. In fact, let's delve into that particular point. The interesting thing is, if you're making an argument about electability, as in your electability, then there's a problem. I mean, ultimately, there was a question somewhere sufficient enough that you thought you needed to answer. If the question is asked and you're answering it, there's something wrong. Oh, let's delve into Kamala Harris. I want to talk about Kamala Harris on the campaign trail and the events that are taking place, another indignity. Nothing, again, to do that she's black or a woman or whatever she's calling herself. I guess my point is, I hate that answer because that answer completely misses the point that the issue is her policies, and what is taking place in the context of this particular election. Right now, news is out that Kamala Harris is hemorrhaging cash. Hemorrhaging, that's the term they were using. Slashing her staff and prosecuting a restructuring. She's losing money. She's millions of dollars behind her other campaigns. I'm just going to read this part. Kamala Harris is dramatically restructuring her campaign and deploying staffers to Iowa and laying off dozens of aides at her Baltimore headquarters, according to campaign resources, a memo obtained Wednesday by Politico, as she struggled to resuscitate her beleaguered presidential bid. The move comes as Harris, hemorrhaging cash and in danger of lacking the resources to mount a competitive bid against better-funded rivals in Iowa. The overhaul would touch nearly every facet of Harris's operation, with layoffs or redeployments coming at headquarters, as well as New Hampshire, Nevada, and her home state of California. One of the guys at the bottom was absolutely hilarious because he was absolutely right. She's from fucking California. The idea you don't have support for high dollar donors doesn't make any sense, said Democrat donor who maxed out the Harris's campaign but is disappointed in her inability to build a large-scale fundraising operation. I blame her. I want to talk about Kamala Harris's, let's say, foray into this particular campaign. It will be quick. It won't necessarily take long. But let's go through a Kamala Harris, this is your political life. Because I am, at this point, willing to sign her political obituary. Put a fork in it. It's done. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, or at this point, even Streamlabs. We like to say even $1 helps, because it does. All of this stuff gets demonetized. So I read part of that to you. I mean, the article goes into all of the changes that she's making and everything else, but ultimately, she's broke. She's going into debt. Undergirding Harris's weak fundraising, overspending, and I've told you before on this channel This was infinitely predictable. I mean, articles that came out with it earlier talking about people being, hesitant about her, saying she needs to get something going for them to continue to support her. Now, think about it from their perspective. You're rich. You have political ambitions in regards to policies and those type of things that you want to see in the world, in government. And you invest in various candidates that would help you get those political objectives accomplished. Great. You don't want to waste your money any more than anyone else. And as you look at a candidate, if that candidate seems viable, no issue. Even if it's a long shot, if it's viable, no issue. If that candidate looks dodgy, if it looks like getting weaker, not necessarily getting stronger, if it looks as if other people are lapping her and her campaign is falling apart from the standpoint of cash, do you continue to support a campaign that looks like, from your standpoint, it has no chance of winning? The answer, of course, is no. You may continue to support it for a little bit just in case things may turn around. But ultimately, people and money start to recede. People and money start to recede. They're leaving her. I want to do a Kamala Harris, this is your life. Kamala Harris, this is your life. If you remember early on in this election cycle, it seems like forever ago, this took place. This was her high moment.
So on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. Mm-hmm. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate.
That little girl was me, Joe Biden. That is awesome. That little girl was me. That little girl was me. Oh, I love that.
Among Democrats, we have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
That's not true. That's not true. But keep going.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender.
Joe Biden might be out of it, but there's a politician in there. She is going after him, and she gets him to get into the argument of states' rights. Like, Joe Biden gets dragged into an amazing bit of debate prep. Whatever you want to think of Kamala Harris, her debate prep was on point, and Joe Biden fell right into it. Couldn't have been any worse for Joe Biden. This all came to be because Joe Biden essentially raised the hand of segregationists, saying this kind of civil thing. And their point to him was, why on earth are you going to use segregationists in a party that has a large share of people in that party that are African Americans, and there is a history and a context dealing with those people who are out and out racist? That's their point. Now, Kamala Harris hit him in a particular way that Joe Biden didn't particularly like, because it kind of insinuated that he was racist. Now, after this debate, she gets the better of him. Full go. I'm not going to play the whole clip because I don't want them to shut down my channel. She gets the better of him. Her polling after that spikes. She gets to the point of almost being in like third place in some of the polls, but fourth. She is up. I was reading one of the polls and they said she seemed presidential. The only thing they had to go by was this. They didn't know her from a hole in the wall. They saw her on the debate stage. She seemed presidential. This was her breakout moment. This was the thing that popped her up over the crowd. Even in some of the polls above Elizabeth Warren, she was there. The dark horse candidate. Close. Candidate wants a woman. She seems presidential. We'll give her a shot. Problem. Very next debate, this happens.
Criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
That is brutal. That is brutal because all of it's true. You got to deal with that, though, Kamala. You're a top-tier candidate now. When was this? I don't remember, July or something. You're a top-tier candidate now. You're like number 4. You got to deal with that. One of the candidates in the race gave you a rundown of this is your life. Keeping a man in prison that was innocent, despite the judge telling you to do so. That is gross. And not just that, on death row. Putting those people in prison for pot and laughing about it. Those are not good things. You have to answer that. You're going to get your chance. Give her your space. At this point, there is nothing in the universe stopping you from explaining those horrific, horrific things. God himself. Hands off. Kamala Harris gets the spotlight. It's just you. Explain.
And, Senator Harris, your response?
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so.
They are groaning. Kamala Harris, you had all the time in the world to make your point. She hit you with the truth bomb. Everything she said was absolutely true. You didn't dispute anything that she said. You just said, I was proud of my work in that particular point. Now, she comes back to it because she's that confident about it and says, you kept a man on death row. You kept people on death row that were innocent. And the judge had to literally compel you to do so. The audience groans. The audience groans. After this, Kamala Harris smears Tulsi Gabbard, calling her a Syrian Putin puppet and all this other stuff, and saying, oh, this woman didn't only have 2%. Well, it's a new day, right? After that, downhill. She tanked like 10 points right off the top. First debate poll. Tanked. She fell apart. And she has not been able to climb back up to her feet. That ended her run for the presidency. And for all of the talk that Tulsi Gabbard is nowhere near her, look at this. Look at this. Recent poll, USA Today Suffolk, National. Bastard. Go back. Look at this. Buttigieg, Harris with 3, Yang with 3, Gabbard with 4. So the latest poll that's out. So despite Tulsi Gabbard saying, I'm a top tier candidate and I'm electable and I'm all this other stuff. And she would say, I'm a top tier candidate. The person who she said probably shouldn't be on the debate stage is beating her. Tulsi Gabbard, the career ender. Okay, that's too ambitious. Tulsi Gabbard, the campaign ender. I dubbed the obituary Kamala Harris. I would like to say that it's been nice, but I can't really say that. You've been massively disingenuous. I don't believe you at all. You're locking people up for pot, which immediately gives me a certain disposition of not necessarily liking you. And keeping somebody on death row, paying people 8 cents to fight fires because you don't necessarily, or the state doesn't necessarily want to pay for that service. I mean, and the body camera thing wasn't entirely true either. Kamala Harris has problems with her campaign, and I love the fact that Tulsi Gabbard essentially said, this is your life. These are the things that you did. Explain to the American audience why that's okay. And for her to say, I'm proud of it, and Tulsi Gabbard is like, why are you proud of that? Explain why this is okay. And she had no answer, and she fell like a rock off of a cliff in a black hole immediately after. I mean, she's not doing well. Harris, 4. Buttigieg, 7. Gabbard, 2. I mean, Gabbard and Harris are, for the most part, in similar territory at this point. Okay, here's one where she has 6. And to be fair to her, here's another one where she has 6. But all single digits. And in many of these, low single digits. And people like Buttigieg and even Gabbard have at many places jumped over, or at the very least near her. Kamala Harris, this is your life. Yeah, that's brutal, man. That's brutal. That's brutal. That hurts. That hurts. All right, I'm going to end this because this one is gone 18 minutes. There's a bug in here. All right, like, share, subscribe. Thanks so.